Okay, so hi, good evening. Allow me to introduce myself, although I think almost everyone on the call knows who I am, but if you don't, my name is Mordy Levine. Welcome to Buddhism and Money. I'm the president of Jigme Lingpa Center. I think everyone here knows that's a nonprofit Buddhist center in San Diego, led by Lama Lanang. Brief background, very brief about me before we begin, while people are still joining us. I started to meditate in 1979, and I've been meditating ever since. Meditation and Buddhism was so helpful to me personally and in my career that about 12 years ago, I became the first person certified to teach meditation in many states in the United States, specifically to teach medical personnel, doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, psychologists, teach them how to meditate and how to teach meditation to their own patients. So it was very gratifying. I was very successful. I developed a meditation series called Meditation Pro. And since then, I've taught meditation to over 750,000 people around the world, either in person or through the Meditation Pro series. So I love my daily meditation practice. I don't understand how people don't meditate. And after 40 years or so, I still feel like a beginner in many respects. So if you have a question, you can type it out in the chat box. And if we need to go back and forth on something, then of course we can turn on your microphone. Also, if you want, you don't have to, but you can leave your video on if you want to be seen. But once again, not a requirement, not critical at all. Okay, so we're off to the races. We're off to the races with me asking you a question and getting you guys to do all the work. Here's my question. Does winning the lottery make you happy? That's my question. Does winning the lottery make you happy? Someone called you up right now and said, hey, you just won $10 million lottery. Remember that we picked a receipt. You went shopping 3 weeks ago in the grocery store. We picked your receipt out of 20,000 people and you won $10 million. Does winning the lottery make you happy? Jump in anytime. Tell me what you think. Momentarily, on and off. Well, how long? For how long of a moment, Cynthia? For just like 1 second, or for a day, or for 3 days? How long you got to be happy for knowing that someone just gave you $10 million?
Well, I say on and off because perhaps in the moment, yes, and then you get busy, and then maybe you remember at night. And I think it would be kind of like a roller coaster, but I can't tell you the amount of time. Yeah.
Got it. So I'd be happy. I'd be really happy. I'd be happy for days, probably weeks, maybe even a month or so. But we're going to get back to that in a second. So next question, true or false? The Buddha only taught about suffering, impermanence, compassion, and denial of pleasure. True or false? Verdadero o falso? False. That's right. Martha's okay. Martha knows the answers to all these questions. Okay, next one. True or false? Ultimately, everything is ephemeral. So making money and attaining wealth is a waste of time and non-Buddhist. True or false? Rosalina, false. That is correct. By the way, you win a prize. If you get them all right, you get $10 million. That's your prize. Okay. True or false? The Buddha did not encourage people to become wealthy. True or false? The Buddha did not encourage people to become wealthy. Okay. There we go. Someone wrote the letter F, which I assume means false, and she is Jeanette. That is correct. False. These are all false, but a lot of people believe this stuff. So that's why I wanted to give this class. So I have two stories to tell you about. Not millionaires are meaningless in today's society. So we're talking about billionaires. We're just going to go straight to the top. So the first story is a guy named Chuck Feeney. Chuck Feeney, you can look him up. He was actually a real person. And he made his money. He made $8 billion In duty-free shopping business, duty-free, like you go to the airport or you cross over a border, there's duty-free, and he had a lot of those stores, $8 billion. And in 1982, he set up a foundation. His goal was, Martha, am I going too fast for you or I'm okay?
You're fine because I'm actually not translating,
Oh,
so
perfect. So I can
pretty good.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So in 1982, he set up a foundation. His goal was to secretly give away his entire fortune. And last September, that was last month, he finished that goal. He had given it all away 38 years later at the age of 89. He's known for, he rents a small apartment now. He flies economy class. He only has one pair of shoes. You can look it up, true story. He does not own a car, and he's known for his frugality and his humility. His foundation finally ran out of money, and he was an inspiration for Bill Gates and Warren Buffett to establish what's called a giving pledge program for the world's richest people. Those people pledge to commit to giving at least half of their fortune away to charity. Warren Buffett said that Feeney is my hero and Bill Gates' hero. He should be everyone's hero. So that's story number two. Story number one. Story number two. A friend of mine is a therapist, and one of his patients is a billionaire, and he has a lot of financial stress. And he told my friend this story, how he was chatting with his neighbor, and his neighbor seemed quite satisfied with his life. And in conversation, it came out that his neighbor's net worth was $20 million. And the billionaire is like, it was very hard for him to digest. So in therapy, he was asking my friend, guy's worth $20 million. How does he do it? It's like, how can he afford to live? He couldn't comprehend that. So this is the billionaire telling the therapist about his neighbor whose own net worth was only $20 million. So we're going to get back to that story in a moment. But I always, ever since I heard it, I just find it funny. I probably shouldn't laugh, someone's suffering, but how does he do it? How does he make ends meet? It's only worth $20 million. So those are two stories. We're going to get back to them. Okay, Buddhism in 5 minutes or less. That's how simple we can make Buddhism if we really want to. So we experience, just a reminder for some of us, we experience, and I'm sure some of you will correct me if I'm wrong, because I have some experts on the call, which is great. So we experience disappointment, suffering, dissatisfaction, anger, irritation, annoyance, fear, because we are overly attached to our desires. What we want to happen doesn't always happen. We don't recognize that we and everything in our lives is impermanent or ephemeral. We hold on to what we are attached to. We want more of it, and we're fearful of losing it. We support our identity, our sense of self, with stories about who we are and what should or should not happen. And the good news is we can reduce all of our suffering and dissatisfaction by following a path that reduces our attachment, increases compassion for ourselves and others, and recognizes impermanence in the world. And we do that by following something that in Buddhism we call the Eightfold Path, right? I'm not going to get into any of this right now, but we all know them. Well, a lot of us know them. Right view, right intent, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation. We'll talk about that in a moment. So why do some think that Buddhists should not seek wealth? Why do some people think Buddhists should not seek wealth? That's for you. What do you think? Where does that concept come from that Buddhists should not be wealthy and should not seek wealth? No say, Rosalina? You can do better than that. Why do you think that's true? That happens to be true. Many people don't understand that.
I can respond.
Sure,
I think
please.
there are two reasons. One, because Buddhism in many people's mind associated with the monks, and monks usually do not strive for wealth. So when people see the Buddhists, they see this is like a monks living, rejecting all the money, anything, wealth, just staying very, very like basic. I think it's one aspect. And another aspect, because in many other religions, there is encouragement not to maybe become wealthy, because spiritual development is more important than the wealth. So that's why depends on the people background, depends on their state of mind. There are the thoughts about that Buddhism should not seek wealth.
Right on. So that's absolutely correct. The Buddha taught two kinds of people, right? He taught monks and he taught everyone else, which we will call householders or lay people, non-monks. And guess what? How did we get the teachings today? Who wrote them down? The monks did. So the teachings we have today were orally transmitted and eventually written down by his followers, who were all monks. And as Mariana said, guess what? The monks, they didn't have money. They gave up their money. We'll talk about that in a moment. So let's see, what exactly did the Buddha say? Well, here's a quote from the Anguttara Nikaya, one of the sutras. Two kinds of happiness exist, one in lay life and the other in renounced life. Of these two, happiness in renounced life is better. So I'll read it again. Two kinds of happiness exist, one in lay life, that's for householders, and the other kind of happiness is in renounced life, that's monks. And of these two, happiness in renounced life is better. Okay, here's the second quote. Two kinds of happiness, and this is what the Buddha said this, right? I didn't say this, I didn't make this up. Two kinds of happiness exist, one derived from sensory satisfaction and the other derived from giving up sensory satisfaction. Of these two, the happiness derived from giving up sensory satisfaction is better. So what does this mean? There's two takeaways here. One, you can be happy as a monk or as a layperson, for sure. And you can be happy from sensory satisfaction or from giving it up. Buddha says, yeah, you can be happy either way. But he also says you can be happier by being a monk and by giving up sensory satisfaction than not. So once again, keep in mind that the teachings are geared towards primarily, not all, we'll talk about that today, but geared towards monastics. Monastics have committed their lives to seek liberation. If you're a monk and you seek liberation, you're not going to be driving around in many cars, a nice house with a pool. It's possible, but you won't get there as fast. So as far as our topic is concerned, the Buddha says you will get more happiness with fewer possessions. For that reason, almost all Buddhist monks from any lineage make a vow to give up all possessions. And Tibetan monks are allowed to possess, depending on the lineage, three robes, and own a handful of personal items. They shave their heads, shave their faces to discard vanity, and symbolize the renunciation of worldly life. Now, of course, each country is different. Each lineage is different. Okay. Most of you know the words of My Perfect Teacher by Patrul Rinpoche, one of my favorite lines in the book. If you have goats, you have goat problems. You have goats, you have goat problems. And meaning once you own something, that whatever it is that you own or you're associated with, it's going to change. And it might, issues are going to come up. It's not going to stay the same. So our family has a running joke. We kind of use that as a mantra. Whenever anything goes wrong, the dishwasher goes wrong, the dog has to go to the vet, anything that costs money, it's like, oh, there you go. When you have dog problems. So that quote, simple fact, if you have something, you won't always have it in the same way in the future. Things change. So we try not to be surprised when something goes wrong. And I think Patrul Rinpoche was also aiming at, hey, less is better. One more concept, and then we'll talk more about money and Buddhism. So ultimate truth versus relative truth. So of course, some of you know this. Relative truth or conventional truth describes our daily experience in a concrete world. Some things feel better than others. Some things are more painful, less painful, more comfortable, less comfortable. We should help others. Good karma for us when we help others. We need money to survive from a relative perspective until you are enlightened. And that's when ultimate truth comes into play, describes the ultimate reality, which is empty of concrete and inherent characteristics. So these things exist. Almost everything we interact with is empty of inherent existence. Things exist just not the way we think they do. The way we think they exist is attributing a sense of permanence to everything, a strong sense of self to ourselves, and that strong sense of solidity causes us to stress when things change. Change is proof that ultimately there is no inherent existence to stuff, to things, to people near you. So in Buddhism, we use relative truth to get to ultimate truth. How? By accumulating good karma, doing good deeds, helping others, eliminating the poisons and habits in our mind stream. All are working on the basis of relative truth. These things matter until they don't matter anymore. So now that we're all advanced Buddhists, next quote, what did the Buddha say about poverty and wealth for householders? So in the numerical discourses, poverty is a cause of pain for lay people. Being poor, they run into debt. This situation would lead them into a decline. Whether in trading, cattle farming, archery, government service, or any other profession or industry, the layperson should strive to advance in his or her respective field. Okay? So the Buddha also gave advice on financial matters, right? Basically said, he identified traits conducive to happiness in this life. Hardworking, if you're vigilant, protecting your wealth from theft and disaster. So he really did address a lot of things to householders, because these quotes are not for monks. Virtuous friendship, balanced living, and then all the way at the bottom, another quote: wealth acquired by energetic striving, amassed by the strength of your arms, earned by the sweat of your brow, righteous wealth righteously gained. So some quotes from the Buddha. So just a brief recap. The Buddha supports householders attaining wealth, teaches us how to do it and how to keep it and use it. So why do we see money? So money, we now know, the Buddha supported that. Great, excellent. So why do we see money as the solution to our problems? What's going on there? What is the mechanism there? Why do we typically see money? Oh, if I only had that much money. Oh, if I only made a little bit more, et cetera, et cetera. Capitalism, says Martha. Yeah, we're brought up in a capitalist society, for sure. Capitalist society is trying to sell us stuff, right? Stuff that we probably don't need. Good answer. What else? Why do you think we see money as the solution to our problems?
Because in some situations, it is a really solution for the problems, and some not, and some is.
True. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, Rosalina, you're right. It is a solution for the relative world. You're both saying the same thing. So it relieves stress. Very simple. It relieves stress. It seems to fix a lot of problems or losses that we have. And Jeanette says it gives us a sense of security with money. Absolutely. So the very initial feeling we get when our car is fixed, when we get a new car, a new house, a new clothing, when my car breaks down, I like to be able to fix it. That costs money. Our desire is met. And the feeling is so good and so addictive, sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's not so subtle, that we want that feeling again, especially once the car gets old or it breaks down too many times, or you're watching a commercial and you see a really cool car model that came out, or you're seeing your neighbor drive it, all subtle ways. So unfortunately, the odds are against us in fighting that addiction. Why? There's something called dopamine, maybe you know it, which it's a neurotransmitter. It's a chemistry in our body. Our body makes it, and our nervous system uses it to send messages between nerve cells. So it's actually called a chemical messenger. It sends messages from one nerve cell to the other. It doesn't create pleasurable feelings. Some people call it a pleasurable drug that we have pleasurable. That's not what it is. It doesn't create pleasurable feelings. It helps reinforce enjoyable sensations and behaviors by linking things that make you feel good with a desire to do them again. So if you have ice cream, you're having sex, these are enjoyable sensations, you desire to do it again. That's what dopamine does. It links things that make you feel good with a desire to do them again. So the odds are a little bit against us if we want to break out of that habit of wanting things and and getting more stuff desire. So extreme cases, does winning the lottery make you happier? Okay, let's talk about that. We all agreed, or most of us agreed, the brave ones of us agreed that it would give us some sense of happiness for a period of time. So we're smart to realize it's not going to solve all of our problems, right? So these two economists, Oswald and Winkleman, they wrote a book, just came out about a year or so ago, and they looked at all the studies that were out there looking at lottery winners. The very first one was in 1978, Philip Brickman, and he looked at 29 accident victims, 22 lottery winners, and 22 people that was a control group, means they didn't win the lottery and they weren't in an accident. He looked at 3 groups of people, and he concluded after looking at them, interviewing them, lottery winners were not happier than the other groups. And that has been in the public eye when, and you see that, when I posted something on Facebook about this, people responded saying, no, lottery winners are not happier than other people. And that's based upon this study that was released 42 years ago. The problem is that 22 people is not a lot of people. And the difference between the 3 groups was minimal. So those of you that know little statistics, statistically, the sample sizes were too small to draw any meaningful conclusion. So if out of the 22 people that won the lottery, we interviewed them and 12 of them said they didn't feel any better after 6 months or a year, and 10 said they felt great, can't really draw any conclusion by comparing 12 to 10. It's just not enough in the sample size. So unfortunately, but that got published first, and that got a lot of press. So now what? So finally, I'm going to kind of cut to the chase here. There are many studies that took place, by the way, since 1978, all small sample sizes. Guess what? You go to Germany, and they keep incredible track and data of people that win the lottery, all kinds of data. So these guys, Oswald and Winkleman, they got the data from Germany. They looked at 617 winners, and they studied them. And what they learned there was winning money actually does make people happier. Absolutely. In general, not every single instance, of course, but winning money does actually make people more happy, and more money makes people less stressed and more satisfied with their life. Okay, well, that's good to know. So should we all go out and get lottery tickets? I mean, there you have it. We have a definitive study, large sample size. These guys know what they're doing. They're experts, more than me and you. There you go. We should all become lottery winners. Problem solved. We can stop the class right here, so we can all go out and get lotto or whatever they have in your town. How's that? That was easy. Buddhism and money. Let's go out and win lottery. Okay. So, well, not that easy to win the lottery. So what about the rest of us? What about me and you? We haven't won the lottery. So experts say that happiness does increase with wealth, but the correlation peaks at earning $75,000 a year. So what that means is that if you're earning 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, you earn more and more and more and more, your happiness will increase with your wealth. But it stops at about $75,000. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Let's look at some people that are millionaires. Someone's got $6, $7 million, $8 million. If they get another million, doesn't make that much of a difference to them. They get a little bit happier. The incremental happiness by making, it's like you have 8 cars, you get a 9th car, it's like, okay, great, I feel good about it, but it doesn't really float your boat. So here's a slide that kind of tells the story about the, for people that are not millionaires, which is the blue line there represents as it goes up, means you're getting happier. All the way at the bottom axis is income. So 30,000, 40, all the way up to about $70,000. And then you see the blue line starts to kind of top out a little bit. So you can earn more money, but you don't get happier with it. So that kind of tells the story. So recap, over $75,000 in general, there's always going to be exceptions, you are happier than below $75,000. So that's good to know. When you're worth 7 million, 1 more million doesn't make much of a difference in your happiness. Okay, so we now have all the information. We are now experts on money and happiness. So, do we focus on making more money and make sure we make at least $75,000? Once again, that doesn't mean everyone making over $75,000 is guaranteed happiness. It's a general trend. There's going to be exceptions. For most people, this is just one of many, many ingredients to a happy life. From a relative truth perspective, happiness is going to be related to health, family, upbringing, school experience, how you earn your money, relationships, your state of mind, your culture, your country. If your presidential candidate wins, how you spend your money, on and on and on. So we need to ask a few more questions. So we're going to ask different questions. What happens if you make the money and then you lose the money? Okay? Here's a related question. Martha's comment for Martha. We want more and more, and in some cases, not all cases, it can create havoc. Addiction, suicide, absolutely. So we're asking different questions now. So what happens if you make the money, then you lose the money? And if money helps you be happy, then won't losing it make you not happy? And what if money does make you happy, and then the day after the lottery, when you get a cancer diagnosis, or the day after you start a new job at $75,001, you get fired because of the pandemic? So these are more interesting questions. So we've kind of been asking the wrong question. Does money make you happy? Too narrow. Lottery make you happy? Too narrow. So those are the wrong. So the questions we've been asking, those are wrong. I tricked myself. They all assume that the money you get, you keep it or it increases. But that's not life. We know that. So here's the best question. And you know what's the best? Because I made it in the largest size font. That's how you know. How do we live a happy life with or without financial success? The Buddha says yes, as we saw. He says, remember the Eightfold Path, right? Right view, right intent, right speech, all those things that we need to do. Make money with ethics, work hard, develop a compassion for yourself and others, see the impermanent world as it is, right? Appreciate it without the grasping and the clinging, So the Buddha says the same thing he says about any desire. Reduce it or eliminate it at the root. The grasping and the clinging and the desire. So, okay, well, that's great. We have the formula. But what happens when life doesn't go according to plan? We all have the plan, right? We all know what our plan is. So what happens when life doesn't go according to plan? So, the new Apple Watch comes out and I didn't budget for it. I had the old Apple Watch, but the new one's better. Well, it wasn't in my budget. Or you lose your job, or you have a health issue, or your loved one has a health issue, or you can't afford treatment for ourselves or a loved one. We never really planned on getting sick. Wasn't in my plan. Or hurricane, or we have fires up here, it destroys your home. So what happens when life doesn't go according to plan? So what is the theme here? Well, the theme here is, there's a desire component. When we get stuff or we see stuff, we want more of it, and we don't want it to change. This includes keeping a job or staying in a relationship. Dopamine contributes to that desire because, you have something that feels good, so you want more of it. Jeanette brings up a very good point, which is with this pandemic, she learned we do not need anything more than what we now have. Yeah, I guess we don't really need to go to all those restaurants, and we don't really need to go clothing shopping, and we don't really need, and the list is long, 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 long. So it's absolutely true. Part of the theme to those situations are impermanence, finances, jobs that we've been counting on start to go away or change. Illusion. We get stressed even just thinking about what might happen negatively in the future. So kind of off into the future. Well, what if this happens and then that happens? Then I won't have the job, and we just kind of spiral off. And then the other component, the other part of the theme here is ego or identity support. When we get triggered with stress, something changes, something happens, we create these stories in our minds. If I only had the job, if only the pandemic didn't come, if I only did or did not spend it on that, I call them shoulda, woulda, coulda stories. I should have done this. I would have done that. They could have done, so shoulda, woulda, coulda. And the stories keep the anxiety going in our mind for years. And they're self-sustaining, and they get stronger. The more we tell ourselves the stories, the longer we tell ourselves the stories. So we're becoming ingrained habitually. Or as Martha says, the 8 worldly concerns. So even if you have money, it's probably the most important slide, a grasping mind is a grasping mind before and after you get to 75K, and before and after you get to $5 million or $1 billion. Remember the story about the billionaire in therapy? How does he do it? This guy obviously is in some kind of mental suffering because he has a grasping mind. Didn't matter. $1 billion, that's a lot of money. So our mind determines our happiness, not our bank account. And our mind determines our level of stress and anxiety about finances. So meditating once a day for 15 to 20 minutes is not enough to handle the stressors when desire or undesirable change triggers you during the day. 15, 20 minutes is just not enough. And when I saw, I think everyone here, I'm looking on the list, I think knows Lama, but if you don't, he's our Buddhist teacher, and I saw him last Friday, and we were talking about this class, and I said to him, Lama, we all teach meditation, a lot of people teach meditation, and we all telling people, all you gotta do is just once a day for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, and sure, when you're starting out, that's absolutely what we tell people, and it can benefit people. But I said, but 15, 20 minutes a day is in today's world, I think we could just probably finish talking about the election, is just not going to do very much. It's like a drop in the bucket. And he agreed. He goes, absolutely, absolutely. So if the mind is insecure, then no amount of money will ever make you feel safe. So even if you save $50 million, you just worry about something else, like getting cancer, car accident, if that's the kind of grasping mind you have. So even if you have money, if the mind is insecure, no amount of money will ever make you feel safe. So recap, all conflict is in our minds. All happiness is in our minds. And the Eightfold Path includes, of course, we know, meditation, contemplation, a teacher, good karma activities, because we still are in the relative world. And of course, we monitor our mind, body, and speech. And for some of us, take refuge, which is a commitment to what you can rely on. So you can't rely on money. We know that now. You can't rely on good health. Maybe I'm in great health, but I know when I get older, as I continue to get older, things start to break down in the body. If not for me, then for loved ones. So we take refuge on something we can rely on. And that's something that's not just for Buddhists, but for any religion. You can take refuge in Jesus, or in the Trinity, or in the Jewish God. So in Buddhism, of course, if you're Buddhist, and I'm not sure if all of you are, but we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So taking refuge, it means commit to what you can rely on. And that's true in Buddhism as well as non-Buddhism. So antidotes from a financial perspective. So some of us have financial stress. Doesn't matter how much you have in the bank and how much you make. We've established that. So what are some antidotes? Well, develop generosity. Give away what you have difficulty giving away. This is the antidote to clinging and grasping and desire. I didn't say how much you have to give away, but give away something. It could be a small amount. Helps you to let go of desire and greed. Share more. Share more with your family members. You just made a delicious meal for yourself and someone comes over, oh, can I get a little piece of that? And you're like, no. Get into that habit of sharing, giving away. Donations. Start small, but start. Be content with what you have, even if it changes. So I told this story, some of you may have heard it already. We're a nonprofit organization, so folks make donations. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, someone made a donation of $1. And it was just beautiful to see, because that person wanted us to have it, and the motivation was pure. So it's unrelated to how much you give. The important thing is develop a sense of generosity, share more, be content with what you have, make donations, start small. Start small. The second bullet point is focus on the process or the present moment. Goals are something that happened in the future. Who said this for 200 points? Past is history, the future is mystery. We all know, Lama Manang said that. So we focus on the process of what we're doing. So if your goal is to make more money, then instead of focusing on how much more you're going to make, focus on, what am I doing now to do that? Or if your focus is on some kind of goal in your career or with loved ones, goals don't have to be financially oriented. Focus more on the process or the present moment. Don't try and predict the future. Our mind kind of goes off the deep end sometimes. Well, if this happens and that happens, and et cetera, and we're doing that now in this country with the election. If he becomes president, then this will happen. It's like we're going off the deep end. And I think we've proven pretty well that we can't predict the future. We have no clue what the future will bring. So we don't let our mind spiral into the future worst case scenarios. Of course, plan, but obsessing or trying to predict the future is a form of grasping or clinging, and that keeps us in this kind of mental cyclic existence, samsara. So we put the emphasis on the process, on this moment, not the future. And this is true whether you're playing, You want to play a game, sports, work, love, financial accumulation. Best way to train ourselves to stay in the present. Meditation, of course, and a few other techniques that you can use during the day. So the third bullet point, live a balanced life. Extremes don't work. Extremes don't work. And it's impossible to stay in the extreme. You set yourself up for failure. So live a balanced life between play and work, family and alone time. If you're on a diet, food, balanced life. So if you want to go on a diet, we don't go all the way to the extreme of, I'm going to cut this out, cut this out, cut this. It's like setting ourselves up for failure. Balanced life with spending. Spend within our budget. Hey, you want to buy something so you can enjoy it? Great, enjoy it, but stay within our budget. Don't buy stuff you don't need. Extremes don't work. It's impossible to stay in the extreme. Very famous man named Buddha used to be in the extreme before he was enlightened. He used to be an ascetic, and he figured out that didn't work. Deprivation doesn't work, doesn't make you happy. And when Buddhists talk about renunciation, they aren't talking about, I'm not talking about monks, no sex, no wealth. They're talking about renouncing our attachments, our grasping, our clinging. In the long run, being consistent with all of these will help for sure. So these are antidotes for if you feel we're too stressed, when something goes wrong or I get the bills in the mail or something surprises me financially, then we can reduce those stressors by developing generosity, focusing on the present moment, living a balanced life. So, but sometimes even when we do everything right, why do we experience stress and fear? Even when we do everything right. I meditate every day. I meditate twice a day. I do this. I feel I'm generous. I do give away stuff. I share. I'm a good boy. So even when we do everything right, why do we experience stress and fear? Back to you. What do you think? Because we are human, okay? I'm going to give you half credit for that. It's true. What does that mean? Why do we continue? It looks like everyone here on the list is probably a meditator of some kind. Maybe you don't meditate enough there. Maybe we need to meditate more. Maybe that's the answer. Because we're still prone to karma, that's true. But even with karma, we can handle it. If we wanted to, we still experience stress and fear. So I'll give you some clues. We have a lifetime of habits. We have created a habit of reacting with stress when we're triggered by financial issues or when we are triggered by fear. So now you've got 10, 20, 30, 40 years of reacting a certain way when you get triggered. So we've developed a habit of clinging or attachment to many things and thinking that they're somehow permanent and stable, whether it's people, situations, money, and when that attachment gets shaken, you lose a job, financial loss, potential job loss, the thought of these thoughts, they trigger us, and we've had that habit of reacting with stress for a long time. The second reason is we only partially believe in impermanence. We only partially believe in impermanence. So when life shows us impermanence, we get stressed, we get triggered. After something goes wrong, we retell ourselves these stories which support our view of the world. Something goes wrong, we immediately start a dialogue going in our minds of why it went wrong, whose fault it is, what should have happened, the shoulda, woulda, coulda stories on why something happens to us. And those stories, they're there to simply puff up our identity, but they don't solve the problem and they don't reduce stress. They actually propagate the stress. There's a great quote by Tara Brach, the meditation instructor, very well known. Any story you have about yourself is not the same of the reality of what you are. So I think it's a great quote. So we have a lifetime of habits doing these things. So daily meditation is great. It's a must to survive in this world, but it's not enough to overcome 20, 30, 40 years of unhealthy habits that we've just developed since a child, since we're 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, trying to cope in the world of adults, trying to figure things out. We develop these mechanisms. So they've been around for a long time, and for a while they worked. When you were a little boy or a little girl and you knew you cried, something happened to get you to stop, oh, here's a lollipop. So we need more tools and more help. So what do we do? So what do you do the moment you feel financial stress? How do we break the habit of being triggered? How do we break the attachment? How do we stop the stories? How do we reduce our strong sense of self and permanence in our lives? Well, we keep doing what you're doing. If you're a meditator, great. If you study, if you have a teacher, all great stuff, absolutely. And there are antidotes that Buddhism gives us that will help the moment you feel any stress, including financial stress. And I don't know, some of you may have been on when I taught the class last month on applied mindfulness, reducing and eliminating anxiety and fear. We went through about 10, 12 different antidotes to help reduce stress, anxiety, and fear. And I'll probably give that class again next month, but I want to touch upon one of those antidotes here. It's the most basic. I'm sure some of you know some version of it, but it's good to be reminded of it because, once again, when you feel stress and fear, it's good to know what you can do about it wherever you are at any given time. So one of the many antidotes that I gave in that class is called, the name doesn't really matter, the name, I call it breathing and body connection. And it's very simple. When you notice that you're triggered and you feel stressed because you just opened the bill or an invoice or an unexpected financial situation, so when you notice that you're in an undesirable state of mind, you're stressed, what we do is we observe the feeling wherever you feel it in your body, whether it's your neck or your stomach, your abdomen, or your head. We find one spot in our body that is tight and tense. We observe it, we stay with it, and we breathe slowly into and out of the area where you feel the stress. You can do that for 1 minute, you can do it for 20 minutes, you can do that for 30 minutes. And you just stay with it, and you be curious about the sensation. Thoughts will come into your mind as you're playing this game. We call it a game. And thoughts are going to come into your mind about how to solve the situation. Those stories are going to want to start up again. No problem. Just go back to observation mode. We're observing the feeling, find where it is in your body, observe it, stay with it while breathing into and out of the area where you feel the stress. Eyes can be opened or closed. It doesn't matter. Sounds simple, right? Great. We're going to try it. We're going to practice it. So think about something that happened today. I already have something in my mind yesterday that mildly annoyed you. There's nothing, that's okay too. But if you got irritated or triggered by something, think about it. And we're just going to do this for about maybe less than a minute. And just close your eyes and just be comfortable and just kind of, observe. Just take your neck area, though it could be any part of your body that you feel stress. It's usually the neck, it could be the head, it could be abdomen throbbing. And I'll stop speaking in a moment, but for now, just observe the stress or the tension in the neck area, and then breathe in and out of that area. So observe your breath, breathing in and out of the neck area. Feel your face relax as you do it. And as you observe the breath, if thoughts come in and out, no problem, just go back to observing the breath coming in and out of the neck area. And I'm going to stop speaking for about 15, 20 seconds. So just enjoy playing the game. Okay, very slowly. Open your eyes. If your eyes were closed, open them. Simple, really simple technique. I'm sure some of you already know the technique. So, why does this technique work? Or is there any feedback? Not that I expect miracles in 1 minute worth of a technique, but anyone experience anything? I felt better, I felt worse, my headache got better, my headache got worse, whatever. Anyone want to share what their 45 seconds was like? No one wants to share. That's okay. Yeah, Martha's giving me a great commercial, which is my previous class had a lot of tools for that. It feels really good to go back to your body and de-stress. That's true. So yeah, Cynthia says more relaxed and centered. Yeah, it was interesting. I do this technique a lot, many times a day. And even now I was able to think back to something that had happened today that irritated me. And feel free to disagree. I do appreciate when people have a different experience. Jeanette says, I feel really relaxed and connected. My face just all of a sudden relaxed. My shoulders relaxed. I started to think back to that moment, and then I said, nope, I'm going to go back to my breathing. So within a very, very short period of time, I was able to relax. And as Jeanette says, stay connected. Cynthia says, get centered. Yeah. So why does this work? So the first thing that happens is we're breaking that habitual reaction, right? What's the habitual reaction? The habitual reaction is fear, stress, stories, right? All this kind of stuff going off into the deep end about what could happen, what might happen. So it breaks that habit immediately, stops the stories. It brings the body and the mind into the present moment. It teaches the body. Now, here's some other stuff that's happening. It's such a simple thing. It's really quite beautiful on the power behind this so simplistic thing that we're doing. It teaches the body that it's okay. Because the first moment I was closing my eyes, my body wasn't okay. I had stress here. I had stress here. It teaches the body that it is okay. It teaches the body and the mind that it can calm itself. That's very important to know, because sometimes when we feel stressed and anxious, it feels like it's never going to go away and this is our life. And that's not true, because we can't predict the future. So it teaches the body that it can calm itself and that it's okay. And it also teaches our mind that we have a degree of control about how we feel, that you're not going to be stressed forever. These are so important things for the body and the mind to know. From 30 to 40 years of putting ourselves through stress when things don't go the way we think they should go, because we're attached to permanence, because we're clinging, because we've trained ourselves to tell a story, we now realize that we can break that habit. What a beautiful thing. It calms the mind when the body calms. So when your mind gets calm, your body gets calm. When your body gets calm, your mind it's a circle. We also, when we become clear, we start to realize that our view of the future is just not accurate. So that's kind of, lack of a better word, stupid. Ignorant's a better word when we kind of go off into the deep end like that. So this very simple technique works. And it's not a commercial because I'm not charging anything, But if you want more of those techniques, then I believe next month I'll teach that class again on how to reduce fear and anxiety. And this is just one example, but this is the most basic one. And basic or not, it really works. So does it work right away? How long will it take until you feel better? Don't know. Depends on a lot of variables. Depends on your habitual past. Doesn't really matter how long it takes. The important thing is that you're moving in the right direction, even if it's only half an inch at a time. So, stories, you put a little drop of water in the bucket, you look in the bucket and you can barely see it. It's, oh, a drop of water, I don't even see it. But if every day you put a drop of water, eventually it'll build up and you'll have a lot of water. So, any questions? Any questions on that or anything we've talked about so far? Because we're coming to the end. No questions. So I'll still open up for questions, but here's a recap slide. You know what? I'm not going to go to the recap slide yet. I'm going to ask you guys to recap something that you learned, hopefully, in the last 56 minutes, or something that reminded you of something you knew, right? Because a lot of us on the call now are experienced Buddhists or meditators or whatever. So something that you learned that you didn't know, or you were reminded of something that, oh yeah, that's right, that's helpful. Let me try that. Ball's in your court. Well, hopefully someone's typing. So I will tell you what I learned, even though I've given this class or similar classes many times, was I'm actually amazed every single time I do that technique, whether it's during the day or in the class, at how it breaks the habitual reaction in such a short period of time. It's just mind-blowing to me that a simple thing like that can stop the stress. Problem doesn't go away. We'll deal with the problem, of course, but it stops the stress. Martha, thank you. Martha says that what she learned or was reminded of, that we can't put our happiness on the material world. Absolutely. Or another way to phrase it is, we can be a little happy from the material world, but that's not the end all, the be all. We can't rely on it. You can only rely on, if you're a Buddhist, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And that goes very deep. I'm not going to get into that now. If you're not a Buddhist, then you can rely on whatever religion, whether it's a Jesus or the Jewish God or Hindu gods, whatever you can. Those are what you can rely on for your happiness. So I'm going to recap. The Buddha supports skillful earning and accumulating money. It's okay to earn and accumulate money when done skillfully. We've developed habitual reactions. So skillfully means Eightfold Path and everything else we talked about and everything else that you know is if you're a Buddhist. We have developed habitual reactions over our lifetimes. We have a habit of clinging or attachment to many things, thinking they're going to be permanent. We retell our stories to strengthen our self-identity. We have a habit of reacting with stress. Daily meditation is not enough. Antidotes are available to reduce or eliminate our habits. So our reaction that we've learned over a lifetime is anger, stress, anxiety to a trigger. That trigger when growing up doesn't necessarily work now. As I mentioned, the child grows up in a household where in order to be heard, child how to be angry or throw a tantrum. And at that time, they would be heard, maybe even in school. Doesn't work today. Not good for you, not good for those around you, not healthy. We can turn these antidotes into a game. And we start with small stressors first. You look at your stress and tension through your breathing. Fear or anxiety stays with you less and less and less. So you might play this game 5, 10, 15, 20 times a day. Great. Here's what you will learn, and this I will speak from experience, is those stressors, that anxiety, that fear lowers a lot and shortens. It's like, wow, couldn't ask for more. And eventually, you know what your triggers are and you see them coming before the trigger goes off. So you can actually apply the antidote before the anxiety kicks in. And sometimes you might want to even consider avoiding the stressor. That's a little bit of a slippery slope because you want to be able to work with your triggers, not avoid them. A great monk named Atisha, who helped bring Buddhism from India to Tibet when he traveled. That was a long trip. He brought along a guy that makes the tea and kind of the porter for the group, who really pissed him off and got him irritated, specifically to use that as an opportunity to work with his fear, anxiety, and his triggers. Your mind sees that the connection between thought and stress, or thought and state of mind, or thought and body reaction is habitual, which will weaken over time if you put in the work. Catherine has a great point here. She learned that the breathing is shallow when stressed. There's a pattern that we've developed of holding the breath, and it deepens and becomes more regular with this practice. So yeah, play the game. She plays this game already. Good. Dozens of times a day. Great. So it's not about getting back to the little financial world. It's not about winning or succeeding or fixing the problem or making more money or winning. That is not the goal. It's about paying attention and coming into the present moment, usually with your breath. It's about practicing these antidotes over and over and over again. First with small stuff. You don't even have to be good at it. You just have to do it and be consistent at doing it. So it's not easy because sometimes we really like to be angry. We hold on to it. We feel good with it. We know it. That's my anger. Don't tell me I'm wrong. I know I'm right. So it's not easy. We have to be brave. You know, when we get angry, sometimes we want to hold on to it. But if you're already brave simply by showing up today. So anyway, so any questions or comments before we end the class?
I have one.
Yes, go right ahead, Martha. Thank you.
You know, in the beginning, Marty, you mentioned a quote about, I think it was from a sutra that mentioned about how monks have a better relationship with money than lay people, you know, or like, I don't remember exactly the quote, but it said like what the monks do is better, right?
Right.
Basically.
So what the Buddha said was, in general, let's see if I can find it pretty quickly.
I think it was like the second one or something. Oh, no, not true.
He said there's two kinds of happiness, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can be happy as a householder and you can be happy as a monk.
Yeah.
Of these two, happiness is better as a monk. That's what he says.
Yeah, so it really grabbed my attention because, well, I've heard the Dalai Lama speak about this and also our own teachers speak about this. And the Dalai Lama says that being a monk is easier. You know, he didn't really say better. He said easier. And I really do believe this is the case, you know, to really renounce, you know, to all and go to a monastery and not have any, you know, any cash or any debt or any credit cards or not a lot of possessions, well, that or not even a lot of hair, you know, it makes it quite simpler to relate. I'm not saying that there's no merit in that. There's a lot of merit, of course, because then other things probably you know, appear, because that's the way the mind is. But I've heard that our teachers say that being a lay person and practicing, you know, in daily life and having these money issues and having a partner and having, you know, all of this samsara, like really put it right in your face, is difficult. But it's also like a higher level of practice, because you have to deal with all of that and you're not hiding away from it. I don't know, like I take that as probably the monks translating it to their favor, saying that it was better. I don't agree with the word better. I would say simpler, or, you know, easier. That was my opinion. We
Yeah.
deal with
So
a lot of things.
yeah. So what we could do, and I might do it later, is go back into the sutra, go back to the Pali, and see what word did the Buddha use there,
Aha.
or what word did the translators or the monks, because as we all know, it wasn't written down for 300-400
500
years,
years
500
after the
years.
Buddha died.
So,
Yeah.
but this is the quote, which is better, which is different than easier.
Yeah.
So, but we could go back and look at what word was used there and say, yeah, well, maybe it was translated, you know, and this assumes that the people that retold these sutras for 500 years did it correctly as well. I tend to think yes, because it's not just one person remembering, it's hundreds, thousands of Buddhists remembering. But I think, assuming that it's better, I think another question is, which is, well, then why don't we all just go into the monastery if it's better?
Yeah. It doesn't work.
So the issue there is, you know, if life's better, you know, over there, let's just go over there. You know, if life's better in an area where there's no fires, let's go move there. You know, that's what we do. We go where things are better. Okay. So, and I think the answer is because we're attached to our current lifestyle.
Yeah, but also like the poison, right? It's the, like in Vajrayana we say the poison is the medicine, right? So like we are really in the midst of samsara and we're practicing with all of these poisons because, you know, there's a lot of growth in them also, like that we have to deal with money issues really, like it how do you say it makes us also advance more, because we do have to deal with that. I think, you know, it's great that we have, it's going to sound weird, but it's great that we have these problems, because they're, if we succeed, they're really going to, you know, tame our mind. They're really going to, you know, purify our karma.
Yeah, there's a story about the monk who had an anger issue, and his teacher said, "Oh, you know, you got to go back up to the monastery. You know, he's in town getting angry at someone. He says, hey, you got to go back up to the monastery and start meditating again. And don't come back until, you know, you've solved your anger issue." So the guy goes up the mountain, back to the monastery, meditates for years and years and years, and says, you know, I think I've got the anger thing under control. Starts heading down the mountain, and there's you know, some sheep crossing the road, and one of the sheep steps on a stone, hits the guy in the head, the monk in the head, and he loses his temper at the sheep and the sheep herder, and says, lost my temper, got angry, goes back up to the monastery, meditate another few years, comes back down, keeps doing that until finally, because why? Because guess what? In the monastery, you know, there's less going on that's going to trigger you. There's probably still triggers. I know there's triggers in the monastery. I know, you know, people are people wherever you go. And so there are going to be triggers and irritation, things like that, but probably a lot less than we have in the householder's life. I think also we're under an illusion that even though we teach ourselves life is not permanent, I think we're under an illusion that we can still be happier here than there. So I think it's hard to break that that state of mind. But I do believe that, I mean, I know that all the monks and the teachers that I've talked to, they're clearly a lot happier than the people living down here, than the householders. So that kind of is proof, so to speak, of what the Buddha is saying. But it is something to think about. And well, then there's the middle ground, right? Which is, I forget if it was Jeanette or someone said earlier, yeah. So there's a middle ground, right? So this is how we've been living our lives. And this is the monastery. And then the pandemic kicks in. And now we've kind of, we're a little bit less, with the materialistic stuff, because you don't go out and buy stuff so much anymore. So we've simplified.
The best of both worlds, basically.
Kind of, yeah. We've been forced to simplify our lives, which is much more in tune with living a monastic life. So I think that's kind of what we're hearing here also with the Buddha's quote is, yeah, you can be happy with sensory and you can be happy with giving it up too. And giving it up is going to be better. But there's always a middle ground, which is, what we would call. So the Buddha didn't say, everyone come on up to the monastery and be a monk. He didn't say that, because you could be happy as a householder as well, with the middle way. So anyways, but very, very good point. Something certainly to think about. So, okay. Cynthia wants to know when we're going to teach us how to make money. Okay, that's the advanced class. At the advanced class. That is an interesting topic, is how to make money, and we're not going to talk about that here. But good point. Any other comments, thoughts, or questions?
Yes, Mordy, it's Mariana, and I have two comments. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation, and I love the way how you present with the PowerPoint presentation. It's very easy to follow, and it goes together with your explanation. So thank you. You put an additional time and extra time to prepare it. Thank you so much.
Right.
And the second comment, it's just listening to your presentation, it's remind me that we are all collections of the habits. And basically, it's up to us. If we are aware and we recognize our habits, we start working with them. And working with habits, it's a lifelong practice. And then we work with one habits, we change them, then other habits can come, and then we're getting older, and other habits coming. So basically, it's like always a process of awareness and working with the habits and doing meditation, dealing with the life. And this is kind of unending until we die, and then next lifetime. So in a way, kind of choosing the habits, picking up the habits that work with, and then stick with that, work until we change them, and then go to another habit. So this is kind of, it's toward the money, toward meditation, toward our sleeping, eating patterns, what we do. That's always what our teacher is telling us. So basically, that's what you're pointing out. We have to working with our habits and improve them.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point, which is something I mentioned in the fear and anxiety class, which is what reincarnates really, when those of us that believe in rebirth and reincarnation, are your habits. That's really what reincarnates. That's really what you take with you in however we react now. That's how we're going to react in the bardo, and when we get out of the bardo. So whatever triggers, whatever things, whatever habits we have, karmically, that's what we take with us. So it's not only, when you look at an enlightened being or people who are more enlightened, more evolved than us, they're okay with everything. Oh, they gave me chocolate ice cream instead of vanilla ice cream. Okay, great. Or, oh, this is what happens instead of that. Okay, great. No problem. So because they've eliminated the habit or the reaction to the triggers. There are fewer or no triggers. Even the great enlightened beings that got taken away by the Chinese military and put in prison for 10, 20, 30 years. Sorry about the noise in the background. Their main concern was not being angry and irritated with their Chinese guards. So they were able to eliminate their habits. And that's really a great goal. So we get to use the relative conventional life in order to achieve the ultimate, which is everything's okay. Even when it's not okay, it's okay. So something to think about. Anyways, Mariana, thank you very much. So thank you all for being here. And of course, thank you to Lama Lanang for motivating and inspiring me and allowing me to teach this class. May all beings benefit. Happy to answer any questions. I already did. And that's about it. So thank you. And everyone have a great evening.
Thank you, Mordy.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, Marty.